Right, I was gonna say. All right, team.
Go. All right, first I have to stop sharing. Am I still sharing my screen?
Now you're off.
I'm off. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to Grand Rounds. I'm Kelly Forst, an attorney in the Central Florida Practice Group and one of the co-chairs of the FACP Outreach Committee. We're excited to welcome you to this session of Grand Rounds, a monthly lunchtime training, typically showcasing a different Florida collaborative practice group each month. Today, my co-chair of Outreach, Liz Reboredo, along with Ari Harper, and I will be presenting this month's Grand Rounds as a kickoff to the FACP conference. There, the theme will be building strong collaborative teams. Typically, the first portion of the Grand Round session is a presentation followed by a discussion period. Today, we'll be jumping right into the discussion questions where we'll troubleshoot and brainstorm solutions to the unique problems presented in the fact pattern, which we will share with you. If you'd like to contribute to the discussion, please raise your hand by clicking at the bottom of your screen in the reactions box. We expect a lively discussion on this topic. If you'd like to present at a future Grand Rounds or otherwise become more involved in the FACP Outreach Committee, please let us know. You can email myself or Liz and we'll place our email addresses in the chat. Thank you all for coming. And I'm happy now to introduce my friend and co-chair of the Outreach Committee of FACP, Liz Reboredo. Liz is a trained collaborative family law attorney and Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator. She is the founder of Divorce and Kindness, Inc., a firm which supports couples going through divorce or co-parenting issues in a collaborative, empathetic, and efficient way. Liz is co-chair of Outreach of FACP, secretary of her collaborative practice group in Miami, the Collaborative Family Law Institute, and chair of the Special Events Committee of the Miami-Dade County Hispanic Affairs Advisory Board. She's also a member of the National Association of Divorce Professionals.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Today's Grand Round topic is going to be strengthening the team without breaking the clients. As Kelly mentioned, it's a lead into the collaborative conference coming up in June. We hope to see you all there, where we will do more talking about teams. Today, presenting with me is Kelly Forst, as you've already met, my co-chair, and also Ari Harper. So Ari Harper is the manager at J.D. Gilbert and Company, CPAS, specializing in business valuations, marital dissolution, forensic accounting, and related services. Ari is a CPA accredited in collaborative practice and business valuation and is a certified fraud examiner. Ari is a graduate of the inaugural class of the FACP Leadership Institute, as are Kelly and I, and serves on the board of Choose Collaborative in South Palm Beach County. Kelly Forst is a collaborative family law attorney practicing in New York and Florida. She is a member of the collaborative practice groups in Orlando, Florida, and Rochester, New York, and of FACP and IACP. She has served on numerous committees, including co-chairing the FACP Outreach Committee this year and the board of the Collaborative Law Association of in the Rochester area in New York, and is a graduate of, as I mentioned, the inaugural class of the FACP Leadership Institute. Kelly obtained her JD from Syracuse University in 1999 and has been practicing collaborative law since 2005.
So welcome, everybody. We're going to start out by reading the fact pattern. I hope that you got it ahead of time. I'm not sure if everyone did. What you may not know about Brenda and Eddie's story is that they were married for many years and had 2 children. Brenda did not work much during the marriage. Eddie got his real estate license and ultimately became a real estate developer, doing very well for himself and his family. Their 2 children, a daughter Billy and a son Joel, are a sophomore in college and a junior in high school. As the story goes, the time came when they decided to get a divorce and they chose the collaborative process. Eddie's business partner had been through a very bad divorce and recommended that Brenda and Eddie not proceed with litigation if they wanted to remain the closest of friends. Of course, Brenda never worried about the finances, knew nothing about them, and she lived a comfortable life.
Eddie hired a lawyer who suggested 3 friendly collaborative colleagues, excuse me, and Brenda selected one of them, hoping to avoid any conflict despite her fear that she wouldn't have someone fighting for her. The collaborative attorneys selected the remaining team members. During the second full meeting, the collaborative financial professional was distracted on his phone and obviously not engaged in the process. He also did not want to prepare the financial affidavit because it was not specifically requested of him. Later in the case, when Eddie got the CFP's bill, he called his attorney angry about the amount due. After some discussion, he said he would pay, but before he did, the CFP threatened to sue him. Ultimately, the financial professional became disinterested and didn't want to take time for the debrief, leaving the other professionals feeling as if their relationship with him was unimportant. So now, in keeping with the conference theme of building a strong collaborative team, we're going to jump right into the discussion. And we've got a series of questions around building the team without breaking the clients. Liz?
Thank you. So in our fact pattern, Brenda doesn't want to make waves, right? She gets suggestions of 3 attorneys and she just goes with one of them. But in the back of her mind, she's worried, as sometimes I hear collaborative clients are, that the attorneys won't fight for her. The first question that comes to mind are around the initial selection of the team members. In the fact pattern, Eddie's attorney suggested 3 attorneys, and then the attorneys chose the rest of the team members without input from Eddie and Brenda. So we'll start with the question of what is the process for deciding who the team will be? Does it matter if you, as one of the attorneys, know the other attorney well? Should you use this opportunity to get to know that attorney better? Or is it better to just work with attorneys you already know? What part, if any, do the clients play in making the decisions about who the team members will be? Any commentary? Ari, what do you think?
Well, so I've got a few perspectives. So I don't think it should matter if the attorneys know each other well. Clearly, you don't want to have animosity between them or some kind of like a negative history or relationship. That probably doesn't bode well. As far as what role the clients play in making that selection, I think it's pretty paramount. I guess I don't know in terms of the other attorney, right? Each person should probably have full agency in selecting their own attorneys. But when it comes to the neutrals, what I've seen work best is suggestions from the attorneys and letting the clients be a part of picking them out. Some clients may not want that, right? Some people just want to be told. So I think it's, like a lot of answers, it depends. But in a client-driven process, to the extent that the clients have the inclination to choose, I think you want to give them as much leeway as you can.
So I had a question about protocols on this. I'm wondering what people's experiences are in terms of their local practice groups having specific protocols for whether they're using a full team every time, or if it's optional to only have a part of a team to have, just the two attorneys. As I understand it, the collaborative process is defined by having two attorneys and two clients, and then everybody else technically is optional. And, part of what we're concerned with is cost to the client. And I know, I see Bob's question, how does a client possibly know the criteria to use to choose a neutral? So Bob, it sounds to me like your preference would always be that the professionals choose the neutral, and that's part of the professional's jobs at the beginning, is to figure out what's going on with the case maybe, and then choose neutrals that you think are going to be, I don't know, they're going to work well with this family.
You asking me?
I'm
a question?
asking you.
Okay, so I've always done it with the attorneys making the choice. I would love to be able to consider a different model. I honestly don't know how clients could possibly know what criteria to use. And so I'm asking those, if you all are doing something different, I'd like to learn.
And Jennifer, I see you have a comment. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like and share.
The way I understand it is typically the attorneys are selecting the professionals that are involved because they know what the case involves and who might be the best fit for the parties. But if there was a different format for doing that, do the neutrals or the financials ever offer consultations where they can, meet with them and the parties can then decide themselves, this person is the best fit for our family?
So
I have a quick question. How many financial professionals do we have here in the training today? Is it just one?
Two.
And Ari.
Two?
Oh, there's David. Three.
So we've got 3 financial professionals. And how many MHPs do we have here? 1, 2. I'm only seeing just a couple. So we're really talking 2 lawyers and only a few of the affiliated professionals that are also involved. So to the financial professionals, do you offer the clients the ability to come and meet with you and interview you? Would you do that without charge? How long of a, what would you do in that situation if a client, I think it was Dave who said he's had people who have wanted to do that. How do you deal with that?
So I've done that before where I've participated. I'm sorry, David, I didn't see you were about to put your hand up. We'll go to you.
Okay.
So I've done that. What I personally do, and I'm sure it varies, is I offer a limited free consultation. So I won't, have you come to my office and, spend the afternoon and rub your feet or something for 4 hours. But if you want to have a 15 to 20 minute Zoom to meet me and get a feel for my personality and, the fact that I'm not going to rub your feet and see how I charge and all those sorts of things, I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to get into a substantive consultation where I may charge, depending on what it really calls for. I've been on the other end of, or really on that end of, okay, listen, I've got a case. You are amongst a handful of financial neutrals that I think are an appropriate, professional for this case. I would like to allow the clients to have the opportunity to choose. And so would you be okay with, a 15-minute Zoom where they can meet you? And I knew that I was one of several, and that's, that's fine. That's not an issue. And, I'm more than happy to introduce myself, especially if it's going to facilitate a client-driven process like that.
David, you had something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've had situations where potential clients have actually, individuals have just reached out to me first. They haven't spoken to anybody else yet. And I basically try to go through quickly the process choices that they have. And if they seem to be interested in collaborative, then I typically will refer them to our group's website so they can go look and call and talk to someone. So that's obviously if they, and that's over a half an hour or so. And then obviously if that's, they call me first. The other situation, I mean, I'm certainly willing to talk to clients as a potential neutral in a collaborative case when they've already spoken to attorneys. But to be honest with you, I usually don't have that opportunity because it seems that, generally the professionals are, not to say right or wrong, if they're chosen only by the attorneys and the clients are given an option, certain attorneys might lean towards certain types of financial professionals all the time versus trying to, maybe learn about some of the other professionals that could potentially work. Maybe it's not always business evaluations. Maybe it's not always a CPA. There are other financial professionals out there that are willing to do the work, but that opportunity oftentimes just doesn't come because the way the process is structured.
So Brenda put a comment in. Hi, Brenda. I think our interactions with the collaborative professionals allows us to put together the best team for this family. It's part of their first understanding of curating a team just for them. The clients really get to decide if they connect with those neutrals in their first individual meeting. Rarely do they not connect because we've been thoughtful in our selection. Can you just explain what you mean when you say it's part of their first understanding of curating a team just for them? You're talking about the clients there, right?
Right. So when we're having those discussions about collaborative from the beginning and they're making the choice of that process, we're talking about the team all together and about selecting a team just for them. So we're getting to know what are the issues for them, getting to know each of them. And the two attorneys are usually, the first ones usually who are doing that. And so I talked to them about the fact that the other attorney and we're going to get together and have a discussion about selecting the team that's just right for them. And given the fact that we've made all these relationships in our development groups, our practice groups, our statewide groups, our international groups now, we've made all of these relationships. So we really do know people's strengths. Like, for instance, I know which mental health people, they work with addiction issues. We know that. We have personalities, right? Sometimes we think a certain mental health might not have the right presentation for these particular clients, and they might not be the right age, they might not have the right demeanor. All of those things come from our interactions together as collaborative professionals. So when we're putting together the best team that we think is the best team, and we're usually not wrong, it works kind of seamlessly, but it's also a leap of faith for our clients, right? Okay, they're putting together a team, I'm part of this, and my first interaction with that neutral for them, the client, is usually in that first individual meeting. So they get to meet them. And if they don't connect for whatever reason, they're going to know then that they don't connect, and they're going to come back to their lawyers and say, I don't know that that's the right neutral for me. So they do have that opportunity at that point.
So that brings us to the next set of questions. What do we need to know about our clients in making these choices? What assumptions are we making based on the facts that we have at the very beginning of the case? What more do you want to know about Brenda and Eddie, for example, before even suggesting another team member? Brenda selected her attorney hoping to avoid any conflict, but still wanting someone to fight for her. How do we address Brenda's concerns as a team, if at all? So it's a lot of questions all in one thing. And I think the first one is, okay, what do we need to know? What assumptions are we making about this family? How well do we even know them in order to make the decision that we know who will be a good team member for them? Anybody? Bob, you got anything?
Seems like you don't know unless you have the experience. And I
You don't know
agree
what?
with, you don't know if you're going to have a good team unless you have experience. I'm a firm believer of bringing in new neutrals and suggesting new attorneys so that the collaborative process expands. But I agree with Brenda that chances are the attorneys know what the best fit is for the clients, given all sorts of issues that are involved.
So, Lauren,
I'm actually just going through this process now, and I was working with the other attorney and considering neutrals, and we are trying some new people we haven't tried before, but from being in meetings and development groups, we've talked about, if you have clients that are already a little bit tense and emotional, then maybe picking a mental health neutral who is a very calming presence. If you have people who aren't seem like you're kind of pulling them into dealing with their issues, then maybe you need a mental health professional that's a little more of that nature, that they pull people in. They need to be a little higher energy. So I think as attorneys, we're trying to put together a team that's going to mesh with the personalities of our clients and are going to help. It's almost like picking a partner for them, right? You see what their deficiencies are, if you will, or what their personalities are, and you pick like the puzzle piece that you think is going to help complete them to help them stay engaged in the process. I don't know how well if you have kids issues and they might be needing to work with your mental health professional for several meetings, it would make sense for them to have a couple minutes with that person to make sure that the mental health professional and the client think that they click. But otherwise, I think we try to be very mindful that we're picking a team that completes our client in some way, so that we're helping them be in the right mind frame to make decisions.
it sounds like you're talking about what a lot of leaders do when they are building a team, whether it's in business as a professional, a bunch of colleagues, or in a sports team. You're figuring out what people's strengths and weaknesses are and trying to supplement them or complement them with the members of the team. Elaine?
Well, I was just going to say that we should ask our clients that they may have some wisdom to bring to this process. Sometimes I will find myself describing, well, I have, a couple of neutrals, and this is sort of the characteristics of this person, and this characteristic, and which one sounds right to you, and maybe even more importantly, which one sounds most helpful to your spouse, to get them engaged in that conversation early on about this isn't all about you, it's also about bringing your spouse on board. And I get some very interesting, input that way. And it's also important to share the names of the people we're considering, because, we don't know. We live in small communities. Brenda already knows the person we're contemplating for whatever reason. So the bottom line is to ask, I think.
Jeff has your hand up. Thank you for following my instructions. I see you listen to me. Thank you.
Well, I was following Elaine because she raised her hand as well.
Oh, did she? Oh, I didn't know.
All right. The fact of the matter is, when you interview the client and you find out what their interests are, you get some judgment on their personality. And you also ask about the personality of their spouse. You want to find out the good and the bad, the ugly of both sides as much as you can at your initial meetings. And we all have our go-to people because we feel very, very comfortable with them. But I agree wholeheartedly with Bob. In order to expand the process, you need to bring in new people. I have a collaborative case where I brought in a mental health professional who I don't think was getting the work that she should have been getting. And I said, I want to try this person out. And she hit an absolute grand slam home run in the process. She was fantastic in the process. The other attorney who had never used her was absolutely astounded at how great a job she did in the process. However, she was perfect for the process because of her family. Helen, man,
I know,
okay?
sorry. I'm gonna
she was great for the process because she's very family oriented with kids and things of that nature. So you have to bring new people in, and you have to look at the personalities of the people who are going to be involved in the process as well.
Brenda.
Jeff, I fully agree. I love bringing new people onto a team, especially those that have been newly trained, because I really want them to get going, right? So part of that, though, is I got to get to know those people so that I know that they'll be good for that team, because there's a team where, that comes in with us particular clients, and I know that they need a seasoned team, right? The issues are extreme. Whether it's the mental health or the finance, that it's going to be a tough case. We're going to suit our clients better to have a more seasoned team. But at every opportunity, if we can get to know those newly trained people, those younger people that have not, had as many cases, younger collaborative people, we should do that. And I've had some extraordinary results from that, and surprising. But part of it too is for them to be able to get infiltrated into who we know, right? And who's doing the work and who's serious about doing the work, is when they do that, like note taking on a team. They're raising their hand to do note taking. We then get to see who they are and a lot of their skills and their attention to the process by how they take notes and how they interact with the team that way. So pulling them in that way to also get their feet wet has been extraordinarily beneficial, because then we are getting to know each other and our good parts, our bad parts, and all of that. But bringing in as many new people as we can at every time, I try to do that in almost every case, but it's not necessarily suitable in every case. But at least one new person on a case, I think, is a really great goal to have. So I think it's wonderful that you mentioned that.
And, so that brings to mind, if you're working with team members that you haven't worked with before, what things should you do to make sure that the process runs more smoothly? How do you get to know each other? Is it just, do you have just, one 30-minute meeting before you start the case? Is there, what are the practices that we should implement in order to make sure that the team is bonding from the beginning when you do have new members that haven't worked together before? Helen Ann.
It's very helpful, obviously, to have that initial teleconference, or if you meet in person, to kind of say the do's and don'ts and what everyone likes and dislikes, how they work, just to be on the same page. The lawyers sometimes have, everyone can practice a little bit differently. Is there anything that makes anyone uncomfortable, or are there things that are just that you really appreciate? So that's kind of the logistical piece too. And then they'll talk about, who do we copy on the emails, just kind of devil in the details, dot your I's, cross your T's, kind of go down the list of all the potential interactions and how everybody would like to see things done, just so everyone's comfort levels maintained from the get-go.
And you as a facilitator know to do that. What about some of the attorneys in the group? Would you do anything differently if you were working with someone that you hadn't worked with before, or would you just follow the same standard procedure?
I would definitely spend a little more time getting to know the person. And I feel like it's such an important question. So there's a difference between working with somebody that you already know and you like, and working with someone you already know and you don't like. I've had a situation where I worked with an attorney on a collaborative case that was this guy and I just did not click. And fortunately, we had an MHP, and we had many litigated cases together. This was way back. And this was our first collaborative case. We had a lot of mental health issues on the parties. And so the MHP on the case, we selected one, and she brought us out for drinks so that we could get to know each other on a more personal level, and understand that we had more in common than we thought we did. There was no professional competition that you get when you're litigating that. And I think that's a real problem with people who have been litigators and are now going into collaborative. If you know your your other attorney as a competitor, that can cause a problem too. I think Ari has the next set of questions.
Sure. So this actually relates really well to what we were just talking about, which is what do you want to know about prospective team members? So we've talked a little about, bringing in new people, which I think is great. I was a beneficiary of that not so long ago. But what is it that you're looking for? So you've been to a practice group, and a practice group meeting, you've met some young professionals, you'd like to involve them. Why? What are those attributes? And what do you want to make sure that everyone understands is expected of them? No hands? Brenda.
I don't want to keep talking, but I think about these things a lot, and I've had these experiences. But I think that the more that we do get to know each other, and we do a lot of that in the first professional call, and now, quite frankly, it used to be all on telephone, right? Now it's on Zoom. So we have our first professional telephone call, which is always like an hour, and we have it on Zoom. So we're talking about all of those issues and the expectations, because I think that most teams really suffer when they don't understand what we all expect of each other. We just don't know that, and you're stepping on people's feet, and you don't really even know that they have, this certain expectation or need. And so we really talk about those openly and say, listen, give me feedback too after our first meeting, so that we can really make this team come together, because that's the goal. The more that this team is together, the more success our clients are going to have. And so you put out, some things that might be quirky about you, right? The fact that I'm like the notes Nazi. I just, I'm like making sure that those notes are timely and they're on point, and trying to help the note takers do their very best with them and giving that support. So they all know that I have that little issue, but I put that out front so that they know that about me. And so that's just one thing. I think that first professional telephone call or Zoom is now become just a really important meeting, more than I ever realized when we first learned this process.
It kind of goes to the importance of the debrief at the end too, where you can get feedback from other professionals about you, and and you can get to even know yourself better. Jennifer.
I'm new. And so, speaking from a new person's perspective, what I have found has been really great is so many professionals have been willing, mainly attorneys at this point, but have been willing to do like Zoom conferences with me, just kind of get to know you things, even though we don't have a case together. And I think that is something that will be extremely helpful if everybody were open to it, is like, as new people come into groups, is to do that with as many people as possible and tell them that they should do that, so that you get to know each other. I mean, I had one with Pam Masters last week, and it was wonderful. And I think that's going to be a great source for me. So being able to do that and everybody being open to that has been really helpful.
And do you reach out to people, Jennifer, to make that happen, or are people reaching out to you? Like, how did that come about?
That one came about because I reached out to her. I was suggested to reach out to her because she's working on building the practice over in Reboredo, Volusia. I'm horrible. And so I'm looking to kind of build the practice area in my area. So I wanted to get to know her, and, I want to know as many professionals as possible so that I can start getting cases myself. So it is on me, but letting the new people know that you're willing to do it, I think would be helpful.
David had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everyone about getting to know each other a lot better, and that a lot of that can come or should come from when you actually have your group meetings, whether that be by Zoom or some in person these days. Actually just giving folks an opportunity, new people or even people you've known for a while, but professionally, to talk about their strengths and their capabilities and their willingness of what they can do. Like just like thinking about all the different ways we might charge fees, in a collaborative case, and just being open about various combinations. The same thing with the professionals or in the group. Just having that opportunity to talk, but also finding out something interesting or different or unknown about a person's background, and maybe somehow documenting that, or just knowing that in the group that you have folks that are willing or capable or interested in doing various things. And that's just conversation, continued conversation, and getting to know each other better.
So having said that, we're all talking about getting to know each other better. How much about the professionals, once you get to know them, should be shared with the clients? If we're asking clients to, or allowing them the opportunity to have something to say, where do you draw the line in terms of what you're disclosing about the other professionals in the team? Sheila, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No problem at all. I was still back in the last question. So
Sorry.
I have a couple of random thoughts maybe. We did a one-day training with Woody Mostyn the other day, a couple of weeks ago now, in our practice group. And one of the things that Woody suggested, and I throw it out because I think it's on point, he was talking about taking mediation and turning mediation into a collaborative process. Not the way we normally think of, we have a collaborative case and maybe we bring in a mediator if we need. But the point that's relevant to this discussion is the way he does that. So here it starts with a mediator. And what he will do is have the two clients together interview neutrals, mental health neutrals, financial neutrals, if that's what the case needed. And in his model, the neutrals are coming for a 15-minute, I think he used the term speed dating, where they get to meet the professionals and they can, it's thumbs up, thumbs down at the end of it. And ultimately the clients together make the decision of picking the neutrals. So it's the first time they've made a decision together, which we're basically wanting them to do in the collaborative process. So it was interesting. But when I thought about the logistics of it, I think it might in practice in the real world be hard to get firstly neutrals to agree to this. They may or may not get chosen. If they don't get chosen, they hope they'll get thought of for another case. That's what Woody was saying. But it's kind of labor intensive. And I think there's some merits to it, but I have a hard time seeing how it works in the real world. The thing that I'm noticing, and maybe this is our neighborhood, but maybe more broadly, is it seems to me that people are busier than they were. And the pre-briefs and the debriefs somehow are getting shortchanged because people are busy. And I have a new case starting, and I said to the lawyers, and it's a team that hasn't worked together before. And I said, do you want to just have a pre-brief before the meeting, which is what's been happening? The pre-briefs, the first pre-brief is happening right before the full team meeting. Or do you want to schedule it in advance? I was hoping that the chorus would say, let's schedule it in advance, because I thought we had work to do, not just, like 30 seconds before the clients are going to join us in the room, but well enough in advance that if something comes up or somebody knows something that the others don't know that they really would be really helpful, that we would have time to deal with it, process it, and whatever. So especially with a new case, especially where you haven't worked together and can't finish each other's sentences yet, I see real value to spending time in a pre-brief. And it might be an unpaid professional hour with each other if you don't know each other well, to understand how, what people's strengths and weaknesses are, where they need support, and whatever. One of the things we're instituting in our practice group now, because we are so committed to helping new professionals get involved in the collaborative world, is we're instituting a mentoring system. So anybody who's new to our practice group will be assigned a mentor, so they don't feel they're out there floundering with, how do I, or if I'm a MHP, how do I make you write an agenda or organize the case, or what about note taking, or any of those kinds of things. So we're trying to build in some more support to encourage new people. I think the reality is people do refer to people they know and are comfortable with. And so I keep encouraging, I think somebody wrote it. Somebody wrote in the chat, I saw my name, Bob wrote something, so I got distracted, sorry. That it's really, I think it's really valuable to do pre-briefs in advance and to really get to know each other well. You work out so much in the debrief, and there's so much learning that happens in the debrief for the team in terms of how to handle issues. So I'm really big on the pre-briefs and the debriefs. So what are you saying? Oh, you're telling me I should ask them in advance? Yes. So, but what I've noticed is it's this thing, people seem to be shortchanging it, and I think it's a mistake that we're making. I'm not sure why the expediency thing has won out. I think the world we live on Zoom has made it harder for us to get to know each other. There was a lot more casual meeting of people, and I think that helped to build rapport amongst our professional colleagues. I think it's important to do that. I think it's harder now in today's world to do that. People refer to people they're comfortable with. I strongly encourage, I've been president of my practice group for a while, stepping down now. I strongly encourage people to get involved with things like committees and whatever, because then people get to know you and they get to develop a comfort level, and people are much more likely to refer to somebody that they feel comfortable with. And that's not going to happen unless we really make an effort. It's a little bit harder right now, but really make an effort to get to know each other and get comfortable with each other. You get referrals for all kinds of wacky reasons because people think you're a good fit. Years ago, I got offended at this one, but it's a true story. Somebody said they were looking for a therapist for somebody and they needed a nice Jewish girl. And I thought, that's really not the reason I want to get cases. I want to get cases because people think I have professional skills. But I understood it. They were looking for a fit in temperament, personality, understanding, whatever. And sometimes it's a cultural issue. So I've gotten over feeling offended. But I think that the idea is that we do pick to work with people for very personal reasons, whether it's as professionals or who we think is a good fit for the clients. And most of the time, I think the lawyers do a really good job of, I mean, I haven't heard, there are some stories where something doesn't work out, but I think for the most part, the lawyers have a good sense of, who's going to work well in a team. So.
Thank you, Sheila. We're going to move to the not breaking the clients part now. Ari, you're up.
Yeah, so the first question we have for not breaking the clients is, do you all think that all the team members are essential? And is there a cost benefit analysis that should be done before deciding whether or not to use a specific professional, whether it's, say, for example, using a financial neutral at all, or using a specific facilitator or anything to that effect? Yes, Bob.
Sorry, I was about to formally raise my hand. Look, I did it. I personally will not use the collaborative process without a facilitator because I think they bring so much value to the process. I have done it without a financial professional, and I'm able to do a lot of it myself because of my education and background, but there's something missing without having the neutral financial on board. Legally, we know that only the attorneys are required and the others are discretionary. So I much prefer a full team. And I had one matter where I really had to spend a lot of time convincing my client why we should have a facilitator. He didn't believe it was necessary. They didn't have any minor kids, and it was a waste of his money. And the windup was that the matter was settled because of the facilitator. And it was a good lesson because the facilitator took the couple into a separate room in my office and talked to them instead of us having a meeting where the other attorney was going to raise issues that were going to just blow the whole thing up. So I'm a firm believer.
I tend to agree. I agree with Brenda as well that a full team is probably best. I've actually had, I've had a few where I've had one case where it started with a facilitator and then there suddenly wasn't one on the eve of a meeting. And I effectively had to facilitate the meeting. It went okay, remarkably and luckily, but it was not, it was far from ideal. And it wasn't even really the best value, right? Because I was wearing two hats. And so one that I'm frankly not qualified to wear, it worked out in that instance, but you clearly want somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And so I've had a few instances since then where people, I guess, in some cases understand the value of the neutral financial, but not the neutral facilitator. So sure, I need somebody to count the money, but I don't need somebody to, tell me I'm crazy or a narcissist or, whatever their perspective is of what the facilitator is going to do. And so they've actually asked me, do I really need this? It's usually, a type A entrepreneur type husband who says, come on, you're a businessman. Tell me the truth. Do I really need this? And I say, yes, you do. And in some cases, I've given them, the legitimate explanation of what the facilitator does and why you need them. But in more cut to the chase type personalities, I've actually said, you need one because you need me and I need one. And that's the reason. So go hire the facilitator because you need me to be the accountant and I can't be the accountant without somebody else acting as the facilitator. So that ought to be enough of a reason for you to just go do it. If you really need the actual explanation, I'm happy to provide that as well. Elaine?
Well, I was gonna add on to what you both said. One, I say to clients, the efficiencies involved in having a financial neutral. While yes, I can do it. Yes, I'm comfortable with the numbers. It is so much because if I do it, then the other lawyer has to do it. And the neutral, you will save money with the neutral doing it all in one place, number one. Number two, I say, and I think this resonates a lot, that I can say something the exact same way, the same word, well, the same words. I can use the same words as Ari might say or Sheila might say, but if it's coming out of those neutrals' mouths, the other client, both clients are going to hear it differently. And sometimes when you put in those words, it resonates with clients.
So in our fact pattern, as you saw, Eddie was angry about the money being spent on the financial professional, and they weren't too happy with the way that it was working out with the financial professional. And the payment of fees is always, an issue to be talked about. So at what point do you set out the expectation for the payment of fees to all the various professionals? And if you're in a situation where there's not one marital pot of money, but different pots of money, should the more moneyed spouse should their attorney be at all involved in the collection of fees? I know it comes to mind because I have a case or had a case a long time ago that I was representing the moneyed party, and the collection of the other attorney's fees fell on me. Like I was being asked to collect the fees and my client was confused, thinking like I'm working for the other side, sort of scenario. So how do you navigate through those issues when you have the collection of fees from the different parties? Has anyone had any issue with having to collect fees or clients not wanting to pay the fees of the other professionals?
Jeff has his hand up.
Jeff?
First of all, the issue of fees needs to be discussed at your initial team meeting. And everybody needs to understand that everybody needs to be paid. This has got to be fully understood by both parties. I'm just getting into a case right now where I'm representing the moneyed spouse, and I've already told them, you're paying the neutral's fees. We're not going to argue about it. I mean, when I used to do litigation and I represented the moneyed spouse, give the other attorney a retainer because you have the money and your spouse doesn't. We should protect each other in the process when it comes to being paid. And if you have to step up and have a discussion to make sure that everybody gets paid properly, you need to do that. But this is something that needs to be discussed and understood by everybody from the get-go.
And what about in situations, Jeff, where maybe the billing practices of one of the attorneys is not quite okay with the other people in the process? Should that be addressed by the team? Should it be addressed by the attorneys only? How should that go? Or has anyone had any situation like that?
When you say billing practices, are we talking about overcharging? Are we talking about billing at a higher hourly rate?
No,
All
overcharging.
Overcharging, it probably should be discussed at either pre-briefs or debriefs. If that is an issue that has been raised by anybody, because it's going to have an effect on the entire team. But it's difficult to sit in somebody else's shoes and say you're overcharging, or this is costing too much money because of you. It's difficult.
Helen Ann?
I think what I would do as an MHP is probably privately take the lawyer that's being accused of overcharging, because the MHP is going to hear about that. They're going to be complaining, or the clients, and just do a private meeting and kind of get it on the table and say, we don't want resentments to build, and you got to feel good and you're uncomfortable, and then let the conversation begin and let the client confront their attorney, in a safe and corporate sort of cordial environment. I've heard this all the time. I have usually the clients, I've heard clients complain to me, oh yeah, your attorney with their, and they're, so then it starts to fester. So you want to, first of all, make sure that, I had this with one case, and it turned out that it wasn't that the attorney was charging more. They were doing all the work. They wrote up everything. So yeah, their bill was higher. And then once that was explained, the client was less. So you kind of have to do a little investigation and then confront, and I say confront in a kind way, to see if the lawyer can modify the way they're practicing or come to an understanding that works for both the lawyer and the client.
And in a case like the fact pattern where the financial professional was not paying attention during the meetings and the clients are upset about, well, I have to pay this person X number of dollars, but they weren't even really participating. How should those scenarios be addressed? And Sheila, sorry, I now see your hand up.
You want me to answer that one first?
Sure.
So, that clearly is an issue for debrief before the client even says anything. If you have a professional who's not acting professionally, then that's a professional team issue right from the get-go. So that has to be dealt with. But to go back to your first question, I think this issue of fees is one that really needs to be dealt with head on before the process starts. So it starts in the signing of our individual engagement contracts with the clients, the attorneys, their engagement, and the same for the neutrals. And also in the crafting of the participation agreement, that a lot of issues are cut off at the pass if they're dealt with in the beginning. And we talk about this being a respectful process, and we talk about it being respectful for the professionals also, as Jeff said, means there's an expectation that we will get paid. So we talk about it. It may be an uncomfortable issue. People don't like to talk about that, but it really, if we do it up front and we do it, it's in the beginning before there's hard feelings, and it's sort of done in a very neutral, matter of fact, needs to be dealt with kind of thing. And you work out a lot of it in advance. So you can have two attorneys on a case where one of them has a layered delivery of services. So they have paralegals involved and associates involved, and the other lawyer may be a solo operation. So from the beginning, that's the way it's going to be. And you should have learned that in your pre-brief before the clients are around, to say, how are we going to work? And is this explained to the clients? It's important the clients understand it in the get-go. So a lot of work, I think, needs to be done in this financial issue before the first full team meeting. And then on the first full team meeting, I usually put it on the agenda, the issue of professional fees, because it's the first time we're all together in the room, hearing it all at the same time. And then we address it. And just like any other sort of potentially sticky issue, it's done upfront, honestly, transparently. And it's the work of the full team.
And David said that the fee conversation should be addressed at every team meeting. Is that how everyone here does it? I know that's not the way I've done it, where every team meeting has on the agenda the professional fees.
We do
I
at least a check-in.
Yeah, I usually bring an invoice to every meeting, and whether it's paid up or there's something due, I just, to let the people know where they stand. Let the clients know where they stand, even if there's nothing due at that time, just so they know there's X number of dollars left or whatever. And that kind of invites the other team members, and, you know, usually it's an explicit agreement that we have that that's how we're going to do it.
So I've actually run up recently against a situation where we had determined it on the front end, and then partway through the process, the clients met and decided to change it amongst themselves without informing the team. So there was a change, and then one of them unilaterally decided to no longer honor that agreement. So all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, who's doing what and where and why and who did what? And so we were, the difficulty, the challenge as a team was not getting sucked into the vortex of who was wrong and having these conversations about who did what and when. And I had to kind of reset everybody and say, guys, listen, like everything else here in the process and in life, you have options, and your options are as follows. And the final option is to, you know, stick with the way things are, and we're going to stop work, you know, so you can pay as we originally agreed to. You can pay as you subsequently agreed to without the input of the team. You can pay any other way that you agree to, with or without the input of the team, or you can not pay and we're through here. But those are your options, and that's what we have to do, because all of a sudden there were all these moving parts, and it became part of the you know, the complexion of the rest of the case. So we had to kind of shut it down pretty starkly. Do we have time for additional questions?
I think you can do one more.
Okay, so given this last conversation, being mindful of cost, is it appropriate or helpful to limit the role of any of the professionals, or really the neutrals? Bob?
I'm trying to think of a circumstance under which I would feel comfortable doing that. I think that emasculates the neutrals. I guess it would depend upon the specific circumstances. I could see a financial being asked not to value something, but the financial still has to do his or her job. And the financial needs to say, these other things have to be part of what I need to do to properly do my job.
Well, Bob, you and I actually had a case together where I was brought in on a very specific and limited scope. And I think there were a lot of other issues, but you could see how that was, you know, not ideal. And not just because I didn't get to do everything, and it was a bruise to my ego, or I felt emasculated. That was the least of it. You know, an hour's an hour, and it was fine. But right, I mean, you could see, you know, the answer to a lot of the questions that were asked of me were ultimately, well, I wasn't here for option building, and so right. You know, this is what it is now.
Yep. You tied the professional's hands are tied. Can't do a full job.
Okay, well, thank you all. I think we're at the 1 o'clock mark, so we will say goodbye right now. And thank you all for coming to this month's session of Grand Rounds. We look forward to seeing everyone at the conference June 9th and getting to know each other a lot better then. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good month.